why is it that, eating outside of your species specific diet can be harmful to you? Well, the reason for that is that plants are living creatures and they want to stay living creatures. If you eat them, they die. All living things have a defense, and plants, because they can't move or fight back like an animal who can run away or can fight you, they have to use poison as their main deterrent. I learned in 7th grade biology that plants and animals are in an evolutionary arms race. Plants becoming more and more poisonous so that less and less animals could eat them, so that they can survive and thrive and not go extinct. And animals are becoming more and more adapted to specific poisons in specific plants so that they can eat that plant and survive and thrive as well. But other things couldn't necessarily, and so this was their dedicated food source. So that was an evolutionary advantage. Okay, think koalas, pandas, they eat one plant. There's 340,000 plants in the world. Koalas eat one, pandas eat one. Cows, horses, grazing animals, they eat grass. That's it. The other things, they get sick or they die. The leaves that a giraffe eats are different from the leaves that a gorilla eats. Those are different from the leaves that a deer eats. You mix those leaves around, they all get sick or die. So, we know this inherently, okay? If you get lost in the woods and you run out of food, you can't just eat any random plant, okay? Everyone knows that you'd get very sick, you could die. People have died, okay? So, this is a universal truth throughout the plant kingdom and the fungus kingdom, okay? Is that plants use poisons. If you think about it, all plants are poisonous. It's just that certain animals have evolved the ability to break down specific poisons in specific plants. But if they haven't evolved to eat that plant is bad for them, and that goes for us too. We've known since the 1980s from the work of Professor Bruce Ames out of UC Berkeley that plants, vegetables, things that we eat all the time, or well, not me, but used to, you guys anyway, they contain quite a lot of poisons, and they were comparing this to pesticides because they were trying to ban the pesticides in the 80s because everyone was getting sick. And they said, well, it must be from the pesticides. And, he looked at it and he's like, well, really, the pesticides we've been using for 80 years without any problem, those pesticides? And so he did the studies, and he found that there's actually 10,000 times more naturally occurring poisons in the plants and the vegetables, like spinach, than there is in, the pesticides we spray on them industrially by weight. Okay, so that's 99.99% of the toxic elements are in the plant itself, not the pesticide. And he also found that it was much more carcinogenic. The naturally occurring poisons were far more carcinogenic than the pesticides we sprayed on them industrially. That's why we still have pesticides, because he showed scientifically that, the pesticides are just a drop in the bucket compared to the plant itself. And if you're willing to eat the plant, well, the pesticides aren't really, what you have to worry about, okay? Fast forward to when I was taking cancer biology at the University of Washington in Seattle. We were, again, learning things, that plants protect themselves by using, chemical deterrents. But we were looking at it in a cancer perspective, so we were looking at carcinogens. And we learned day one that Brussels sprouts had 136 known human carcinogens. This is 20 years ago, okay? Mushrooms, just white mushrooms, had over 100 known carcinogens. We were given lists. Spinach, kale, lettuce, celery, cabbage, cucumber, you name it. They all had 60, 80, or over 100 known human carcinogens each. And we know that they're abundant, based on the work of Professor Ames. We were very blown away by this. We thought that he must be joking. He must be having us on. And we're looking around wildly, looking for, who's in on the joke and who's smirking. But no one was. And I remember thinking in my head, but vegetables are still good for you though, right? And he must have read our minds, because he just looked at us and gave us a funny look and said, I don't eat salads. I don't eat vegetables. I don't let my kids eat vegetables. Plants are trying to kill you. So I said, okay, screw plants. And that was my start on a carnivore journey, even though I didn't realize it at the time. I just knew that plants were trying to kill me. I'm not going to eat plants. So I went to the store and I just bought things that didn't have plants. Everything has plants. Everything someone else makes is going to have plants and sugar and things like that. So I was just walking around. There was nothing I could buy, and I came across some eggs. I was like, okay, eggs don't have plants in them. Meat, Meat doesn't come from plants. Milk doesn't come from plants. So I just ate eggs, meat, and milk for 5 years. I was playing, high-low rugby at the time. I was training, sometimes 8-10 hours a day while in university. I couldn't get tired. I couldn't run out of energy. I couldn't get sore. I don't get sore anymore. That soreness is actually from the toxic elements in the plants causing inflammation, pain, and swelling and making you stiff and sore, which is a deterrent. The plant is saying, do not eat me. I'll make you feel bad. But we eat this stuff all the time, and so we always feel bad. We don't even realize it. We think that's normal. It's not normal, okay? So, since then, I've literally felt like a different breed of human. My body works in very different ways. And I was experiencing this in my rugby and my athletic career. I was playing professionally in England, and I remember slipping off of that without really realizing it. And I remember thinking to myself a few months in, I didn't feel as superhuman as I normally do. Like, what's going on? I'm not training as hard. I was 25. Like, gosh, am I over it now? Is my body just breaking down? I figured out later that it was because some plants had mixed in because some of the meat was breaded and I wasn't really thinking about it. And I was like, well, it's not. Is it that much? Does it make that big of a deal? Well, it did. It made it quite a big deal. Okay, so there are other things in plants. So that's sort of a general thing. But let's talk about some specifics. Okay, any botanist on Earth can tell you this, and they can tell you a lot more. This is any introductory botany book can show you this as well. Okay, there are quite a lot of things. All right, so quite a lot of plants poison you by making you very sensitive to light. Okay, there's a thing called celery dermatitis where people eat a lot of celery or handle celery, pick celery and things like that. They get horrible burns in the sun. They have to wear hats, long sleeve shirt, gloves because they will absolutely scorch in the sun. Okay, think how many vegans have a good tan. Okay. Limes, they do this as well. They have oil in the skin. This is an unripe fruit. Those seeds aren't ready yet. That tree does not want you to eat that. So if you start grabbing that, picking that, pulling that, it doesn't want that. So it soaks this oil in your skin. You have very bad burns. We have documented, second-degree burns just from sun exposure after handling limes. It actually happened to my younger brother. As a child, we didn't know what it was. We thought it was like an allergic reaction, but no, this is what it was. Then think about cyanide. There's 3,500 different plants that use cyanide that we know of. Almonds are one of them, okay? There's different amounts of cyanide in almonds, but anywhere from 1 pound to 2 pounds of almonds, so, 400 to 800 grams of almonds, is a lethal dose of cyanide in an adult. And yet we give this stuff to children and tell them that it's good for them. So that's pretty wild to me that we do that and we just play these games with kids. And almonds containing cyanide is not a little known fact. That's a widely known thing. And yet people say, oh, well, yeah, there's cyanide in it, but they just assume that there's really not that much. There's quite a lot. I've sat down and just eaten handfuls of almonds while watching television and easily eaten half a pound. That's half a lethal dose of cyanide. That's insane. And so even if it doesn't kill you, that's not good for your body. Okay. There's nightshades, deadly belladonna, tobacco. These things are quite harmful. They contain solanine, among other things. This can kill you. Okay. We avoid belladonna. This is something that people have used as poisons going back centuries. And people knew for centuries that you don't eat nightshades. And then all of a sudden we forgot this or thought that it didn't really matter that much. But potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, these were all in the nightshade family. And they all contain solanine and other toxic elements. 70 people a year still die from eating potatoes. Potatoes, okay? But it's not that far-fetched. Think about it. I'm sure most people have learned that you take potatoes, you need to keep them in a dark place, in the cupboard or something like that, because if it turns green, it's bad. You can't eat it. Well, what does bad mean? It means it's poisonous, and it's deadly poisonous. If it starts growing a root, you have to cut out the whole root or just throw the whole thing away, because now that's poisonous, deadly poisonous. That can kill you. People that don't realize how bad that is eat it and they die, or because they have to if they're starving, I suppose. But that's a serious thing. And even though a normal potato, when it's not in those forms, isn't necessarily going to kill you, it's not good for you, okay? and then there's carbohydrates and so forth, which fundamentally disrupt your metabolic system and so forth, which is maybe a topic for another time. But I argue that